Following the stunning announcement regarding Front Row Motorsports and 2311 Racing's lawsuit on NASCAR, we go over the reaction for what took place from that, and it is very telling about who sides with who. Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Jet. Welcome back to an episode of Inside the Lines. We're having a wonderful Friday morning with this Talladega race weekend. Of course, we're still talking about the biggest story, that being the lawsuit that took place a couple days ago with 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Now, we did a video yesterday, I believe, discussing, or 2 days ago, discussing the actual lawsuit, what is in the lawsuit. Now we're going to discuss the reaction from that. We also got an interview from Jeffrey Kessler, who went on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, to kind of further explain a little bit about the lawsuit. But first, let's go over the reaction from it. Now, from the fans' perspective, it was generally positive for the teams, for specifically 2311 and Front Row. A lot of them were siding with them, as was I. I felt like that what I read in the charter agreement, or the 2025 charter agreement, was egregiously unfair to the teams and view NASCAR as a big bully and sort of like this dictatorship type of regime. However, some people in the NASCAR circle, in a sense, disagree. One of them was Larry Mack. He was on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio with Daniel Trotta and said this about the lawsuit. He said, quote, "We've got an organization that's been here not even 4 years that all of a sudden is saying we gotta change the way NASCAR's run. I'm all about change. Change is what makes you better. But you know what? When I see Richard Childress, Jack Roush, Rick Hendrick, and Joe Gibbs that's been here longer than some of these guys have been pooping yellow," which that's a weird comparison, but anyways, "and they signed off and said this is good, we're okay. There's things we don't like about it, but we're going to do what's best for the sport and best for our business. And they signed off on it. And these people that have been either not competitive or only been here for 4.5 years have been saying the way we've done business for 76.5 years is wrong." Okay, Larry Mack, I love you, man. I love you. America's crew chief. I love you, Larry, but you cannot be more dumb than with this comment. The way, just because something's been done for so long doesn't mean it's the right way. I mean, hell, we could go back, way back to NASCAR's early years. What happened with Curtis Turner, trying to form a drivers union, got kicked out? What happened at Talladega in 1966, I believe, when they tried to stage a boycott and Bill France, all that stuff? It's been a thing. This is nothing new about teams being upset with NASCAR. It's something that has been happening for a long period of time. Yes, something that's been done for 76 years took NASCAR from a very small southern sport to a national sport. So yeah, you could make the argument that the way they've done business has been good, but I would respond by saying, well, look at what the teams are going through. Yeah, business is good, but for the France family, for the CEOs, for the top executives, not the people that are, in a sense, the bread and butter of the sport, which are the teams and drivers. And it's interesting when Larry Mack points out Richard Childress, Jack Roush, Rick Hendrick, and all those guys, because it took till September. I mean, does Larry forget all the reports earlier in the year about how all the teams weren't happy with the deal? I think even Rick Hendrick, much later on after that, mentioned how they were just tired of it. You know, they just wanted to get it done and over with. It was kind of like with a lot of teams, NASCAR was pushing it so far back that the teams just had enough. They were like, okay, fine, we'll sign it. We're okay, fine, we'll agree to it. It's kind of like you wear someone out. You know, kind of like you beat them and beat them and beat them until they can finally, or kind of say maybe forced to agree with you in a sense. The reason why is because I say forced because in the lawsuit that we talked about a couple of days ago, mentioned how some of the teams felt like they had a gun pointed to their heads. That one person said it was like a communist regime or this type of situation, that they were scared. They were threatened. Fear of retribution from NASCAR. That does not sound like teams saying they were okay with it. They're almost kind of forced to do it or else risk losing their entire livelihood. So for Larry Mack to say that is very single-minded in my eyes. And I think having a team like 2311, specifically a guy like Michael Jordan, Curtis Polk, that came from a completely different business model with the NBA. Look at how that business model is going. Every new TV deal, players are making more money and teams are making more money than ever. Baseball, basketball, football, soccer, all making more money now than before every new TV deal that comes up. Yet NASCAR is the only one that keeps going down. Why is that the case? there is something that is fundamentally wrong about this. Since the inception, since the beginning, NASCAR has always been with independent contractors, with teams basically not having some form of guaranteed form of growth. There's always that saying in racing, if you want to have a small fortune in racing, start with the big one, because you will lose money. That has to change. Just because something has been done for so long, that doesn't mean it's the right way. Yeah, it may have worked in the 60s, but it doesn't work in 2024. Another person in the NASCAR world that shocked me with how he kind of expressed his opinions was Ryan McGee. Another person that I've been a really big fan of. I've really enjoyed. One of the few people at ESPN I actually do enjoy seeing. But he came out with an article yesterday that was really biased. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but it was extremely biased how he laid the headline of this article, saying, the article reads that, filed to ESPN, on the same day the NASCAR community teamed up for Helene Aid, two of its teams announced they were suing the sport. Debate the antitrust lawsuit all you want, but there is no debate about the callousness of the timing. What a damn week. Denny Hamlin even responded by saying, good grief, Ryan. And since then, as you can see by the like and comment ratio, he's been ratioed heavily, big time. A lot of people in the comments were making fun of Ryan McGee and basically saying that, dude, this is such a stupid article. And it was, because does he not know the thing that you could do multiple things at once? I mean, by that, you can make that argument for saying for anything. It's like, why would you file a lawsuit this week? I mean, Jim France is about to get his neck surgery today. Why'd you have to file the lawsuit today? I mean, I'm just making a stupid example, but the point is that it just so happened, a coincidence, that they were doing this at the same time the lawsuit came about. And by the way, 2311 Racing themselves have been doing a lot to provide aid for the people that have been affected by the hurricane the past week. They have provided an amount of resources, an incredible amount of resources to people in need. I mean, hell, even Twitter themselves did a community note on Ryan McGee by saying that 2311 and Front Row Motorsports will request a preliminary injunction to block the enforcement of a section of the 2025 charter agreement so that teams can compete during litigation. To ensure time for a ruling before the season, the teams had to file the complaint as quickly as possible. You could do multiple things at once. Just because this has happened, that doesn't mean we have to just stop everything. Everything has to stop. Life has to still go on. I mean, we're still racing at Talladega by that logic. Because of the hurricane is in North Carolina, we should just stop racing. It's stupid. For Ryan to headline the title like that, it was very disgusting. It shows clear bias for NASCAR's favor. And when you compile that with Ryan McGee saying this, Larry Mack saying this, you kind of maybe form the opinion that, are there certain teams on NASCAR's payroll, or is there certain people that are purposely favoring NASCAR because maybe NASCAR helped them in some way, shape, or form? Some type of conspiracy type going on. I don't know. I'm not going to buy into this whole thing. But it was very telling based on Denny Hamlin's reaction to all this. Denny posted this yesterday saying, while censorship is a big topic in today's media world, Channel 90 might be the poster child. An interview didn't go the way they hoped after our attorney continued to say fact after fact, even though they tried their best to refute. They have since edited/deleted that interview off their channels because the narrative doesn't fit their beliefs. That doesn't convince you of the bias, then nothing will. That sparked big conversations in the NASCAR world. If you look at NASCAR's Sirius XM's type of chapters throughout every episode, you'll notice that there's a section that is completely missing. That's about 20 or so minutes short. In fact, Justin Marks, who was after Jeffrey Kessler in the interview, said, I don't know if I could follow up the previous guests, referencing Jeffrey, but that interview was not there. Now, after much backlash, later on into the afternoon, the interview was posted, but it was first posted by Matthew Weaver, not by SiriusXM NASCAR. Matthew Weaver, a reporter, was the one that broke the full interview, or at least I should say released the full interview. And by the way, Channel 90 is SiriusXM NASCAR radio for those of you that are wondering. So when you compile what Larry and what Ryan's saying, then you see what Denny's saying, then you see how SiriusXM NASCAR kind of went about the situation. And we're going to go through the interview between Jeffrey Kessler and Dave Moody from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. If you want to listen to the full interview, I'll leave a link in the comments section or the description down below. But it is interesting that Dave Moody, that some of the questions that he was asking and how he was asking it, you can kind of tell that he was trying to refute, like what Denny said, trying to refute the lawyers' talking points. And it's very interesting, but we're going to go over some of what Jeffrey said and kind of dive into deep on what the lawsuit looks like and what it could look like down the line. The first part we're going to discuss is about Jeffrey pointing out the charters that have left NASCAR, even though this charter agreement was put in place in 2016.
Okay, so it's the teams and the drivers end up getting just enough economic scraps that they can barely survive, and a lot of them can't survive. In 2016, of the 19 owners, I believe, that existed then, I think it was 19, says 11 of them don't exist anymore because they couldn't survive under this system. Something has got to change. If the teams are going to invest in this sport, if the teams are going to make a better product for the fans, if the teams are going to survive long term, they have to be able to have a fair chance, if they're successful, to get some kind of fair return for their investment. This sport does not permit that because the France family runs this monopoly to stifle it.
Now, to specifically show you the charters that have left NASCAR since the agreement, since 2016, it was Tommy Baldwin Racing at the end of the 2016 season, H. Scott Motorsports, end of 2017, BK Racing, and Furniture Row Racing, who had won the championship the year prior, both in 2018. And then 3 charters in 2024. Obviously, COVID did not help the situation at all with Go Fast Racing, Levi Family Racing, and Germain Racing. And Stewart Haas Racing at the end of this year will be selling all of its charters, basically. I mean, Haas Factory Team will be keeping 1 charter, I believe, but Stewart Haas Racing as a whole will be releasing all 4 of their charters to different teams. So, yeah. Even though this charter agreement was put into place to kind of help guarantee the future of the sport, help the teams grow, you look at all the teams that I mentioned have been eliminated, have been cut, gone from 2016 to the end of 2024. That does not look good if you're looking at this from an objective point of view that, oh, the charter agreement is supposed to help the sport, yet NASCAR is still making much more money, yet the teams are still barely surviving and or even shutting down still. Now, the next part of the clip we're going to play is in reference to Dave Moody saying that, do you really think that the teams of Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, Penske were threatened by NASCAR even though they signed it? This was Kessler's response.
My interpretation is, have you ever heard of the battered spouse syndrome? Okay, you will have someone who gets beaten, who gets abused, who stays in the relationship, and when the police show up to ask about it, they say, oh, it's okay. It's not so bad. I can keep living. I can survive.
Mr. Kessler, we're talking about Roger Penske. We're talking about Rick Hendrick. We're talking about Coach Joe Gibbs. We're talking about independently wealthy, wildly successful businessmen that are not renowned for getting pushed around.
All right. So I have spoken to some of those people. I'm not going to tell you who. Okay? And what they say publicly is not what they say privately. Okay? Here's what you might go back to ask them. How much profits did they make last year? How much did they make the year before that? How much do they think they'll make next year? See what they say.
Now, this was further backed up by Jordan Bianchi on the teardown a couple days ago when this lawsuit first was brought to light by saying that a team owner contacted Jordan saying that he didn't have the balls to do what 2311 and Front Row are doing is because he's afraid of losing his charters, which kind of does feed into what I said earlier about the teams just being afraid and also just sick and tired of it. They're like, okay, fine. We don't want to lose our entire livelihood. Fine. We'll sign it. It's like you beat them down to the point where they just can't get back up and they just reluctantly agree to sign it. That's kind of what is happening here. So it was interesting for Dave Moody to kind of reference that by saying, you really think that these wealthy owners are afraid of it? It's like, it's still NASCAR. I mean, they still kind of control you. The third audio clip then references a bit further into NASCAR and what they want to do by taking their team's IP rights away.
It takes all the intellectual property of the teams, lets NASCAR use it itself without any obligation to share any of the value of that money back with the teams. Okay? It puts forward an economic system where NASCAR could increase the cost of the teams at its will to any degree, and the teams don't get to say anything. You just have to pay it, right? You know, it's like when someone in a legislature, you know, let's say Congress passes a bill and says, yeah, we're going to require this, and the states are going to go pay it. So NASCAR sets up a system that says, yeah, we're going to say you got to do all these things, and by the way, you pay for the whole thing. We're not going to pay a nickel. But that's not how we run NASCAR, is that it's illegal. It's illegal to get a monopoly this way and dictate terms so that no one else can get a fair return on their investment.
I mean, yeah, just another case of the 2025 agreement just being and yes, just another example of how the 2025 agreement is so egregious and is disgusting that NASCAR would even consider offering that as a better deal. It's like, yeah, you get more money, you get more revenue from the TV deal, but you lose everything else. And the fact that, again, the teams signed it, I feel like they all signed it because they were forced to, not because they wanted to. And finally, the fourth clip we're going to show is what the future looks like for both 23XI and Front Row while this lawsuit is going on. Though how this lawsuit affects NASCAR this year and next year is very telling. We don't know when this lawsuit will be resolved, if it gets settled before a grand jury or if not. We don't know what's going to happen, but it is very interesting how NASCAR handles this, because they are going to be asked questions about this with their state of the sport at Phoenix. They will definitely be asked questions about that. You even had Jeremy Mayfield chime in on this. Remember that whole Jeremy Mayfield fiasco by saying, "Oh man, it's just now starting. Buckle up." And yes, we better buckle up, because this is going to be a very, very interesting, wild time for NASCAR.
You can't tell me now about time. Do you know how many lines I done put down, vibes I done sent out? But we ain't hit the dig. I'll up the market till they come red carpet the kids. Success still the target. Soon I'll be crossing that bridge, but can't bring everybody with me. Family only. I got some people think I owe a favor, barely know me. That's why my focus on the road. It's all I know. I see them sticking close to play the wall.